1. This happened yesterday. I had recently finished exams and was moving into a townhouse that I will be sharing with my friends come winter term. The plan was to move my stuff into the townhouse that day, stay the night, then have my family drive me home on Christmas Eve. There was one person left in the townhouse, the friend who I was subletting from, who had just moved her stuff out that morning. The weather was pretty shitty, so she told me as she was leaving that if I didn't feel like leaving the house for lunch, I was welcome to use anything I found in the pantry. The fridge was pretty much empty, since they'd used up all the perishables before they left. But I found a box of chicken stock and some rice noodles in the cupboard. One thing I noticed when I opened the stock was that it was half used, but had not been refrigerated after opening. This should have been the first warning sign, but I figured it probably hadn't been there too long. I decided it was probably fine. I poured the soup in a pot, threw in some 5-spice and used it to boil the noodles. The soup smelled a little funky, but I ate it anyways. Tasted a bit funky too, almost richer than usual, but the taste didn't strike me as that of spoilt food, so I figured I might as well keep eating. Perhaps it was just because it was a different brand than I'm used to. I ate all the noodles, drank as much of the broth as I could stand, and didn't feel queasy, so I went back to unpacking. I had a nice dinner of canned beans with rice, and was getting ready for some 8 o'clock Netflix when the bathroom trip started. The first 2 times it was normal diarrhea, no biggie. I just took some Imodium and resigned myself to pausing my show more often than usual. Third time, however, was different. It started a lot more liquid than the previous 2 rounds. Then the smell started. It smelled exactly like the chicken stock I had been eating before. And as if shitting chicken soup wasn't enough, I also started puking it. I'm not sure how much of this part was food poisoning and how much was nausea from the smell, but since I was still using the toilet, I had to puke in the sink. Fortunately, the bathroom was small enough that I didn't have to stand to do so. Then I heard the footsteps. Turns out my friend let the landlord know that she was moving out that day, but forgot to mention that I was moving in. He was expecting the house to be empty, so when he saw lights on, he came to investigate. And since I hadn't bothered to close the door, he was greeted by the sight of me blasting chicken soup out of both ends all over the washroom. Not my best first impression, and probably not how he would want it to have started his holidays. 2. Oh, the wonderful memories of Granny's house. She lived back in the sticks with no cell phone service, and a 1-lane gravel road that led straight to her driveway. She lived in a 1-story house, and it was one of those old as the hills houses that she and my grandfather, already deceased, raised my dad and their whole family in. Granny was getting older and having a hard time getting around, so Dad and I would go up every Friday night after I got out of school and spend the night and the next day with her. I was about 11 or 12 at the time. Now that the scene is set, time for the big ol' FU. Well, I have this crazy personality trait. Everything I plan never comes to be, and I'm not talking about life plans or anything major. I'm talking simple stuff like dinner plans or plans to hang out with my friends. I could plan to get up and walk from my couch to my bedroom right now, and a meteor would fall on my apartment before I made it to the door. It's a serious problem. So when I came up with this wonderful plan to kill a wasp in the bathroom, I was destined to fail from the start. So Saturday morning draws upon the mountains surrounding my granny's home in the country. We were all hungry, so Dad takes our orders, fires up the truck, and runs up the road to get us breakfast from the restaurant, grocery store, gas station hangout spot for old farmers. He leaves, and soon after it was time for my morning dump. So I get up and walk into the bathroom, ready to do my business, only to open the door to find a gigantic wasp sitting right in the windowsill that was directly behind the throne. The window was open, but it has one of those screens in it, so I couldn't just shoo the wasp away, and swatting it was out of the question since I was too pansy to get within 5 feet of it. So I devised this wonderful plan. I was going to grab a can of wasp spray, walk outside and around the house, climb up the ladder to the window, and unleash chemical warfare on the stingy little douche that was preventing me from making my morning movement in peace. I gathered all the pieces necessary to execute my sting operation. Badum-tsh. And I got to moving. I set up the step ladder, climbed to where I could reach the windowsill, pointed my weapon, and hit the trigger. Toxic spray streamed out of the can and hit the wasp, rendering my mission successful. Too bad the same spray also hit a lit candle that was sitting in the windowsill. Boom! The spray turns to fire, causing a wave of flames to shoot up and catch the curtains, igniting them and burning through them like a flammable fabric that had just been ignited on wasp spray that had caught fire on open flame. I jumped off the stepladder and flew into the kitchen, grabbing the first cup I could find before I shot through the dining room, into the living room past Granny, and into the bathroom where a full-fledged firestorm was commencing. I quickly turned on the sink and used the cup to splash all the water I could onto the curtains, walls, ceiling, wherever the flames had touched. I was throwing water on everything for about 5 minutes after all the flames had already been extinguished, just to make sure that I hadn't burned the house down. Smoke filled the house, and as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom and began to explain what I had done to my poor 85-year-old granny, Dad walks in. He was pissed. Granny gave me $20 for being a firefighter. Dad lectured me for about 3 years about not being an idiot. I never got to take my morning dump that morning. You can still see the dark black stain of flames on the ceiling in that bathroom to this day. And I'll be damned if that wasp wasn't still kicking when I walked in there to clean up. That bastard survived wasp spray and survived being burned by direct flames. I smashed it with the cup. Thanks for reading my FU. Don't play with chemicals around fire, kids. 3. This fuck-up happened about 7 years ago, when I was a bored 13-year-old in the middle of the woods. So, like all bored 13-year-olds who live in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of summer, you get on your bike with your friends, pick a direction, and just ride until you get bored and turn around. My mistake was taking a friend with me who wasn't from the part of town where you need to walk a quarter mile before you can see your neighbor's house, and thus has never encountered what is known as a shotgun to the face. Coming from a family of self-described commie-pinko liberals, I was well versed in this phenomenon, and avoided it at all costs. Except apparently when my friends are involved. We were bored. It was the start of August and the heat had just broken right before a summer storm that night, which left us a solid 6-hour window to explore for the afternoon. I remembered having taken a car ride with my mom down a local road for the first time in our lives, and finding a weird fucking area of the woods around us. That my tiny, preteen brain with nothing to do had convinced me was the site of a government conspiracy and cover-up. As I had like-minded friends, we all developed ideas about this highway overpass that never seemed to have cars go over it, and the mailbox on the ground by the road that held the cryptic message of Spaceballs 0. This is the part where I mention I didn't grow up with cable television, and was primarily entertained by board games, the water company reservoir land behind my house, and old cartoons and movies. Consequently, I had no fucking idea what Spaceballs was until several years later, and decided it was the next MK Ultra, because my dial-up internet only allowed me to view text pages and the occasional RuneScape server, and forums were text pages, so where else could I go? So of course, boredom and random trigger memory means that all of a sudden me and my friend locked eyes and decided we needed to gather evidence and photographs of the Spaceballs 0 site. Cue the backpacks filled with Ziploc sandwich baggies, a handful of Sharpies and some granola bars, like 3 water bottles full of Tang. It's what makes us professionals, come on. No less than 3 digital cameras, some chopsticks, 10 changes of batteries, notepads, pencils and sunglasses. and because we were cool kids, we didn't ride with helmets. About 2 hours and 4 wrong turns later, we arrive. The fabled Spaceball Zero. We collect literally everything, and take more pictures than, probably acceptable, than of any one location ever. There's strange and symbolic graffiti, including the stormtrooper helmets, lurking on a buttress under the abandoned highway. A strange and coiled fish in a lovely shade of 50s orange, some hastily covered up profanity with flaking concrete, and some paint on the ground that we convince ourselves is absolutely the blood of someone spliced while in interdimensional transport. We take scrapings of the dirt, some trash fire, something that was probably the off-burn of meth, the dirt, the asphalt, the concrete. We collect local wildlife and press leaf after leaf and blade of grass after blade of grass, also collecting live specimens for examination under a microscope. We slide down the embankment and take water samples from the creek, running under the road, miraculously still wet in this heat, and take cautious pictures of the abandoned car down the road with no markings, and all black paint and tinted windows. So they would know. We knew they were there. Finally, we approach the fabled mailbox, taking pictures from every angle, and cautiously peeking through the brush to spy the Holy Grail, a Winnebago on cinder blocks out in the woods. Our tiny minds explode, without the tinfoil hats to hold them in, and we make the god-awful decision that all 13-year-olds high on tang with the success of espionage make. We're going to go try and get into the operations center of Spaceballs Zero. This was the moment that I will forever facepalm over. Literally, when I think about it, I actually physically facepalm. I try to open the fucking Winnebago door. Who does that? Who does that? Literally no one is surprised when my eyes are immediately met with 2 round barrels and the bellowing of a drunk swamp Yankee in the middle of nowhere feeling threatened. And of course, we scream and bolt. The man fires into the air, we hurdle the brook and scramble to get our bikes and pedal as fast as we possibly can into the woods, vaguely in the direction of home. Because everyone knows that if you're in the woods, there's trees between you and the bullets. Eventually we scramble into my yard, panting and wheezing, and absolutely horrifyingly elated. Obviously this meant we were right, and we needed to collect a dossier and publish our findings immediately, before they caught up with us and confiscated our information. And like all kids that age, we got bored within a week and mostly forgot about it beyond some giggles shared in a tent at 2 a.m. and whispered discussions about the Guardian of Spaceballs Zero. Well, fast forward about 3 months, and the local radio station is reporting on a murderous man living in a Winnebago off the local highway route. That just happens to have an overpass exit ramp right around where we went biking. Say, isn't that near the... Oops. Turns out the swamp Yankee with the Spaceballs mailbox had killed 2 local detectives, buried them under the overpass, and no one bothered to look for them until it occurred to someone that they had gone out to smoke a bong in the woods and never came back. And weren't they supposed to turn in a report on something? Our local police are terrible. Live in civilization, kids. The only reason we had probably gotten away was because he was both drunk and we were obviously just kids out exploring. 4. In true TIFU form, this happened yesterday. I had a busy morning with meetings and slept in a bit late, so I didn't have time for my morning ritual. Slammed a smoothie on my way out the door and went to 3 meetings within a few blocks of each other. No big deal all morning. I felt great. However, it's worth noting that these were coffee meetings, so by the time lunch rolled around, I was 4 or 5 shots of espresso deep. Meeting number 3 goes a tad late and butts, no pun intended, right up to lunch. Having skipped a proper breakfast and full of caffeine, I didn't notice anything was awry with my digestive tract. Lunch comes up. I have a raw greens and roasted beet salad. Now it's time to pay, and I can feel a sense of urgency building. Not wanting to lose home toilet advantage, I figured I'd wait until I got home. I was parked less than 2 blocks from the restaurant, and my house is less than a 10-minute drive away, so that seemed like a foolproof plan. Here's where I fucked up. When I pulled into the parkade that morning, located directly under a high-end department store, this is important later, I noticed that they were doing construction and had the entrance and exit down to one alternating lane. It didn't strike me as an issue when I pulled in first thing in the morning. No one was lining up to leave. Fast forward to the elevator ride down to the car. I now have to shit. The window had closed from a comfortable 15 to 20 minutes gap to an under 10-minute full-on pile-up inside my colon before I was going to burst. Okay, no big deal, I tell myself. Leave the parkade, direct route home, no biggie. I get in my car, turn the corner, and bam! There's a line of 15+ cars waiting for the entrance lane to go to an exit, and I'm stuck. Underground, in bumper-to-bumper traffic, with my eyes turning brown. Deep breaths. I painfully tell myself, I can make it another 10 minutes, but the pressure is mounting. A co-worker who I initially hired was with me all morning, and in the car in front of me. I pull alongside him to see if I can get a better view. I survey the area and there's no sign of movement. My window goes down, along with my colleague, who I forgot had a conference call with a client at this time. As his window drops, I make eye contact and yell, "I have to shit! What the fuck is going on?" He rips himself laughing and says into his BT speaker, "Sorry guys, that was OP." I hear laughter on the other end and I start laughing. Now I'm losing control and worried I may shit myself from laughing. This is bad. I throw the hazard lights on my car. I'm now triple parked between a row of traffic to leave the parkade and a row of parked cars. And run to the elevator bank, farts dropping with each step. Fuck. The elevator shows up and a girl around 20 gets off. I nearly knock her over to jump in and call up the ground floor. The elevator from the parkade to the street level opens directly into a high-end store. The kind of place with Gucci and Tiffany, store within a store type setups. I, meanwhile, have filled the elevator with what I can only assume was pure methane. I didn't see if anyone got on, as I was ass-clenched, running to the nearest associate asking from 20 feet away where the washroom is. She gives directions. I'm hustling and pretty much crop dusting the entire place, when I finally see the oasis. Women on the left, family on the right. I barely got my coat and jacket off, and made it in time before having what I can only describe as a combination of relief, disgust, and fear in that small room. 5. So this didn't actually happen to me today. It was more like a few years or so back. But I still remember this specific outing pretty clearly. This happened on what I believe to have been a bright and sunny day. Noonish. In America, by the way. I was with my brother, Lucky. Yeah, we'll just call him Lucky in this story. One day, Lucky and I drove to the other side of town, just to get some food and a breath of fresh air. I don't remember everything about the day, but at the restaurant, which I might begin to describe now as a not-so-crowded, decent and tasty spot to sit down and get a quick bite to eat. Though it is not your typical fast food joint, you usually won't have to wait very long once you've ordered your food for it to be ready. Anyways, back to the story. Lucky and I were enjoying our food, about halfway through our lunch. He always ate faster, though. When I started to enjoy my food a bit much, I made the accidental mistake of reaching out and grabbing the bottle of hot sauce instead of my nearby soda bottle. So, without knowing or being aware of what I was actually doing, I had the hot sauce up to my lips, taking a chug of it, just like a soda. I was probably just as shocked as Lucky was about it, though he definitely laughed a lot louder than I might have. I think I remember asking him, "Did they see me?" or something like that, as the workers, or chefs rather, were just a short distance away. This is the kind of place where they cook the food right by the seating area. Everything's quite open, no real walls, hallways or things to block off your sight. I had the same reaction at first, but Lucky was laughing really loudly, loud enough that, to whoever else was around, the workers or other customers, if anyone didn't see my clumsy mistake, it would appear that me and my brother would have likely just started bursting out in laughter all of a sudden, in a quiet kind of atmosphere. Anyways, so then the paranoia set in after the moment of laughter, followed by a slightly embarrassed me. Since it was a small business, we were right there in the open. I had to get out of there and quick. We probably didn't stop laughing until we took off shortly after. I don't remember if I even had the courage to look at the people across the small restaurant. I just wanted to go. I definitely didn't say anything, as I think I left half the food there that I had been eating and headed out quickly. Note, I think I was having a burrito that day, and so that you know, this was my first time sharing one of my stories here. But I have many more. So to the Valentina or Tapatio hot sauce, whatever your name was, let's not meet again, at least. Not like that, in public. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, episode 28. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video, and also a slight apology to the author of the last story for mistakenly telling him that his story was in last week's video. I'd actually recorded it at the same time, but for the length of the video I swapped it out for a different one last minute. So very sorry for keeping you waiting the extra week there. Okay, I'm just going to run off for now. I'm going to nurse my throat with some medicinal Dr. Pepper and get to editing these videos, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.